Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com here in San Diego, California. So what do I got here? This is a Vespa Primavera 2020 Yacht Club Edition. One thing about these scooters, I'm talking all Vespas and most of the Piaggio products, they're all pretty tall. I'm talking the seat height tall. So if you're vertically challenged, your inseam's kind of like less than the average European statute. I don't know. I'm not sure why they make all these bikes taller, because I know some of the scooters that come out of Asia have a little bit lower seat heights, but they are what they are, and we have a solution for you. So right here on the left side on the back of the motor is the lower shock mount bracket. So we have a bracket available that's been custom made for this bike that pretty much drops the shock about an inch down. And one thing we found with the new iGet motor, the muffler, not the motor, the muffler on the iGet motor is a little larger, and we need to add some spacers to the shock to limit the travel so you don't have the muffler making contact to the body. Believe it or not, dropping something just 1 inch can make all the difference between the scooter being comfortable to ride and being unrideable, where you're on your tippy toes coming to a stop, where you feel unstable with the bike. Obviously when you get going, not really an issue. One other thing to keep in mind, if you're looking to lower a scooter, you can always unstaple the seat cover from the plastic base and shade the foam. Pretty much any upholstery shop can do that. If you're pretty handy, you could take apart the seat, pretty much just pop a bunch of staples out and shave the foam down. You can use a belt sander or even a sharp knife. Just take ½ inch or 1 inch off the foam. One thing to keep in mind, the seat's not going to be as comfortable because you're taking the foam out. You could put a different type of foam in there, but it's pretty difficult because the foam's specifically shaped to the seat profile. So two things that are pretty easy to do that drop these scooters down. But today we're going to show how to install this bracket kit and modify the shock to limit the travel. All right, let's jump right into the install. Got my tools out. This isn't the easiest install. You need to have a well-equipped workshop to perform this install, which requires removal of the rear shock. And removing the rear shock or the suspension components from the scooter is going to inherently make the scooter not very stable and want to flop around. So we're going to go ahead and support the center of the scooter. Here I have a scissor jack with a rubber pad on it. That's what we use around here in the workshop. Very handy to have if you have a professional workshop or a well-equipped home mechanic shop. You can always improvise with wooden blocks or whatever else. You can pop a cinder block under there, put some rags on so you don't scratch the frame. But pretty much the frame's stabilized, got it on the center stand. We're going to go right to removing the bracket. And to quicken up this install, I'm going to use power tools. A lot of times I like using hand tools, especially for tightening things. Power tools are great for disassembly and getting fasteners kind of spun into place, but not always the best thing to tighten because you can't really judge how tight this impact is going. You know, you can way over tighten stuff or even have break a bolt. So a 17mm wrench to hold the nylock nut, and with it stabilized, it will come right off. You know, sometimes it will be hanging up in there. Cool thing is it's threaded. You can use impact to kind of unthread it the way out. And you see the motor dropped a little bit. That's just kind of what it does. So get the bracket out of there. Got a 6mm Allen. And you're going to need a 13mm wrench, open end, shut. Go ahead and loosen the 2 Allen screws here. And now we can get the bracket out of the way. So this mod works with any Primavera or Sprint 125 or 150. The 50 uses a different style shock. Go ahead and remove the bracket. Another thing to keep in mind, Primaveras prior to 2017, 2016 and prior, they had an 11-inch wheel, which I actually preferred. I thought it looked better with 11-inch wheel. I've always liked how the Sprint had the 12-inch. So go ahead and put the pair of bolts in there. And you want to tighten these. If you're not familiar with tightening stuff, this is an 8mm fastener. You can tighten it to about 15 foot-pounds, which is around 20 Newton meters, 18 Newton meters, somewhere in there. Like I said, I'm just gonna whip right through this install. For right now, I'm just gonna snug everything up with the impact. So if you wanted to, if you had the older bike with the smaller muffler, you could just hook the shock back up and be done with it. Or if you weigh like 50 pounds and never plan on hitting any bumps, you can just bolt this up too as well. But I don't recommend it. I would recommend limiting the travel because you don't want the muffler touching the bodywork of the scooter. So you see the shocks flopping around. We're not going to put the shock bolt in, but to gain access to the shock, we'll do it from the top, or to drop the shock out, that's the upper mount for the shock. So take a T30 Torx driver. You got 4 fasteners that hold the rack on, the ones with the little step go into front, got a magnetized tip there. Going to remove all 4 of those. Again, I'm sheeting with a nice power driver, makes it nice and simple. Get the gas cap out of there. Probably don't really want to use a power driver with the gas cap open because you have vapors that kind of come out of the gas cap when you open it. Gas cap, a little rubber thing come off, and there's the top of your shock. Take your 13mm, again, I'm going to use the impact. The other option is to hold this little flat with, I think, a 6mm wrench, or better yet, like some type of pliers, because 6mm wrench will usually twist off that, how tight that nut is. And then you can loosen that nut. But to cheat it, just put an impact on there, and there you go. And you can see the whole washer went up because this rubber spacer kind of put some tension on the nut and the washer. And that's kind of what, keeping that tension on that nut will prevent this screw from, or nut from ever coming loose. So you got a split washer, I don't know, it doesn't really do anything. Flat washer, then the rubber. And just pull the shock right out from underneath the scooter. So now that I have the shock out, put 11mm wrench on the little flats that are right below this second nut that's on here. And you can see I'm using a long socket because a shallow socket's not going to get access to that nut. Could use a open or closed end wrench, but that usually works. Same size nut as the other one. And check this out. Usually you don't have to hold the shock shaft. If the shock shaft spins with this, with the 11mm wrench, you can hold that flat. Keep in mind there's a lot of tension on this spring right now, and the nice thing about these shocks is essentially with this threaded shaft, this is what automatically takes the tension out of the, you don't need any sort of spring compressor like you do with a lot of other suspension components that you take apart on motorcycles and scooters. So you get that guy out of there. They've changed the design of this sprint shock a couple times in the past I've seen, but the top may look different if you have an earlier one. So that little spacer guy comes out, this big washer comes off, and then the top hat. So you got those 3 parts, and we'll go ahead and pull the spring out. And there's the shock shaft. Say you're taking apart an old shock, you could check the operation of the shock. There should be a resistance to this. If you feel any section where it's really easy, that means, and see oil leaking from it, then your shock's blowing, needs to be replaced. One thing about these, you just buy a whole new one. Pretty inexpensive for a stock shock. Perfect time to upgrade to a better shock. Since we're limiting the travel on this, I would recommend cranking up your adjustment. Obviously really easy to do when you don't have the spring load on it. It's got a couple different positions right there. We'll put it on out of the 4 positions, the 3rd tightest position right there. So can see it's right on that notch, and the tightest would be that one. So pretty simple adjust. I don't need to really mess with anything there. You can leave this bump stop spacer alone. Take all the included washers with the kit and just drop them right onto the shaft. These are like, high strength nylon washers. Pretty straightforward. Make sure the shaft is pulled all the way up. Go ahead and drop your spring back in. And just the reverse order, pretty much just drop it all back together. And sometimes you gotta push down a little bit on the spring to get it started. So go ahead and tighten this. Keep an eye on that shaft, the threaded shaft. If it starts spinning, you're gonna need to hold it. This is what's tensioning the spring right here. And you pretty much just stop right when you feel resistance or the shaft starts turning. The suspension shaft. There you go. So this is bottomed out right now. Get the nut back on there. And if you want to torque it with a wrench, 16 foot-pounds. Get the 11 in there, get a 13 on there, and just pull them together. This isn't too critical right here, but. And now we have limited the travel on the shock, so the muffler won't contact the bodywork with the lowered suspension bracket. So rubber spacer, the larger ones on the shaft, and go ahead and just carefully, you could feel your way around and get the shock back up in there. And here's one trick I like to do is get everything started. So we'll put the rubber spacer, it's pretty much all the reverse order. I'm gonna get all this stuff on here. Flat washer, split washer, and the nut. And before you tighten that up, you can always get the shock back in here. So you can see I have the frame stabilized, but I'm even doing this just one-handed. Obviously, it would be easier if you had two people helping you. So I'm lifting the motor, put maybe, I don't know what it is, 50 pounds or something of force on the motor here, just to kind of get to hold the line up. And there you go. It's a little easier when you don't tighten the top. So go ahead and put the nut on here. And here's a perfect example of using an impact. Just this is a nylock nut. It will take forever to turn by hand. So you could do so now it's bottomed out. Now I can put a pair of wrenches on there, and that would be about 30 foot-pounds. And right now, it's bottomed out, but it's definitely not that tight right now. So, idea of the nylock nut is it's not going to come loose, but you never get a good feel with a torque wrench or a impact wrench how tight you're tightening something. So it's bottomed out, and 30 foot-pounds is just not really cranking on it, but can you see what I'm doing here? Just something like that. Just using the little muscles to tighten the nut and bolt right there. All right, with the top, again, is what I like to do is watch the socket. And right when it stops, that's as far as you want to go. So the nut is bottomed out. So I'll kind of do a repeat. So you can kind of see the socket spinning pretty fast. And right when it stops, that's as far as you want to impact it. And typically you want to hold this flat and torque this to about 16 foot-pounds. See, the problem is it's going to turn the whole shock, when you're, if you just try to turn against it. Could just impact the crap out of it. Probably not the best idea, but hold the flat. and just give it a pretty good snug, torquing with just a combination wrench. All right, so now we'll get the scooter back together, put the plastic surround back on. So you have all the step screws. You got to get them kind of started because you got the rack or grab handle going right through them. You got the little rubber surround for your gas cap. And this tool is pretty nice. It's got an auto clutch on it. It's specifically just for driving screws, and it works really good. This is a fancy snap-on one, but there's less expensive ones out there that do the same thing. So the clutch has been set on this, and the cool thing is you can actually turn the thing, kind of get a feel for how tight. See how that needs more tightening? Then I can tighten a little bit more. So just showing you how the tools that the pros use kind of work. Really nice little tool here. Not going to do tool reviews. You can find those plenty of other channels that cover that. So now I got the whole lowering bracket and shock of travel limiting spacers installed. You could see the scooter works even better for me. I always said in the past videos, I said I was 5'8". I'm not 5'8". I'm actually 5'6.5". What is that, about 170 centimeters, something like that. So even for me, it's a little more comfortable to ride. Coming to a stop, definitely got a good, sure flat foot on this. I've ridden dirt bikes and all that, that I'm familiar with being on my tippy toes, because the whole idea of a lot of those kind of bikes, you don't want to ever be coming to a stop. You're supposed to be always moving. But with a scooter, you want to be comfortable and practical and work well for you. So I see a good benefit to wanting to lower a scooter, especially the nice, nimble Primavera and Sprint. Kind of my favorite modern Vespa. Show you how it goes on the stand. I will admit it's a little more difficult to get up on the stand, but it still goes right up on it. You can see the rear tire is off the ground more, because pretty much changing that shock dimension, we're pulling the whole wheel one more inch off the ground. So just keep that in mind. Slightly more difficult to get on the stand. By no means difficult, but pretty good upgrade if you're a little bit vertically challenged. I know the height of a lot of people kind of limits like what they buy. A lot of people still buy the genuine buddy scooter, the PGO scooter. Nice low seat height, easy scooter ride. They want a Vespa so bad, but if it doesn't fit you, it's like, I don't know. Say you got a size 36 waist, you're not going to fit in 32 pants. Just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So same thing goes with scooters. It's got to fit you. Look at bicycles. You can get so many different frame sizes, but scooters kind of like they make it one size fits all. Whatever. Enough rambling. Hope everybody found that useful. Maybe if you watched our channel and seen the previous version of this video that I did on the older Primavera, this is the updated video that shows how to do the shock modification as well. Until next time, it's a robot here from Vespa Motorsport, scooterwest.com. Check us out Instagram and Facebook, YouTube, their channel Vespa Motorsport. Check out our website, scooterwest.com.